Praise the Lord, Coeur d'Alene Worship Center Church family. Thank you for joining us tonight for our Tuesday evening service. I look forward to worshiping with every one of you on Sunday morning. I'm very excited to be back to normal church. Well, some sense of normal. The text I'm going to be reading out of this evening is Genesis chapter 41, and we're going to start in verse 39. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. And he clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried out before him, "Bow the knee." So he set him over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no man may lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, and he gave him a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. So Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. Now, in 7 plentiful years, the ground brought forth abundantly. So he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. He had laid up in every city food of the fields which surrounded them. Joseph gathered very much grain, as the sand of the sea, until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. And to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God has made me forget all of the toil of my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. See, from reading this passage, it seems like Joseph is pretty blessed. He has a lot going for him. He's second in command in all of the land of Egypt. He's second only to Pharaoh. He is abundantly blessed. But his life wasn't always like this. To get to the point that we can see in this passage, Joseph endured immeasurable suffering. And today, this evening, for a brief time, I'm going to talk to you about the purpose behind the pain. See, all this started in Genesis chapter 37 when Joseph, he was just a teenager. He dreamed a dream that his family would bow before him, combined with the fact that his father favored him over all the other brothers. These two things combined caused his brothers to hate him. To make a long story short, his brothers sold him into Egyptian slavery, and he was eventually thrown into Egyptian prison for a crime that he never committed. He didn't do anything wrong. He was a righteous man, yet he had to endure immeasurable suffering. He was betrayed by his own flesh and blood, lied on, and imprisoned. Joseph was a righteous man, yet he was hated by his own brothers. Genesis 37 tells us that his brothers couldn't even speak peaceably unto him. What this means is, back in this time, the Jewish people would greet their loved ones, their friends, their family, people that they loved and cared about. They would greet them with a customary, "Peace be unto you." This was just a way to bring good tidings, to greet your fellow neighbor, your friend, your loved one. And withholding this greeting, especially from your own family member, your own brother, your own flesh and blood, was an unmistakable but silent sign of hostility towards that person. Now, Joseph's brothers hated him, first of all, because their father, Jacob, favored him over all the other brothers. Genesis 37:3 tells us that Joseph was his father's son of old age. This term means that he had his father's favor because he had wisdom well beyond his years. He was, so to speak, an old head on young shoulders. He had wisdom, and this caused his father to favor him. His father favored him so much he made him a coat of many colors. This was a coat that had multicolored fabric sewn together. It was sort of a coveted thing. It really symbolized the love that Jacob had for Joseph. Joseph's brothers, however, hated him most for his dreams. See, Joseph had two dreams, and in the first dream, his brothers bowed down before him, and then in the second dream, his entire family bowed down before him. Now, these dreams, back in that time, dreams carried a lot of significance. That's oftentimes how the Lord would speak to his people. In our day, we do get dreams from the Lord, but that's not his preferred way to communicate with us. And a lot of times when people say they have a dream from the Lord, we kind of have to be careful to test that, to make sure that that dream was actually from God. But Joseph's dreams were from the Lord. The Lord was communicating with Joseph. A mere teenager. The Bible tells us that he was only 17 when this happened. A mere teenager hearing from the Lord, such a young age, only stirred up his brother's jealousy even more. Let's turn to Genesis chapter 37, and we're going to start in verse 18. And now when they saw him afar off, even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another, "Look, the dreamer is coming. Come, therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit. And we shall say, some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams." His brothers hated him so much for his dreams that they wanted to kill him. And thankfully, as we can read on, Reuben heard their plan, and he kind of talked some reason into them. So they decided instead of killing Joseph, they would just throw him into a pit and then sell him into slavery. So verse 36, they sold him to some Midianites. And then these Midianites went on to sell Joseph to Egyptian slavery to Potiphar, who was a high-ranking official in Egypt at that time. See, Joseph never did anything against his brothers. He never had any ill feelings towards them. He never, caused conflict with them. They just hated him because of his dreams, because the Lord spoke to him. See, Joseph, he had to go through some hardship. He was betrayed by his own family. And then after he was sold into the house of Potiphar, we can see that the Lord never left Joseph through his suffering. Because after he was sold into the house of Potiphar, Potiphar saw that the Lord was with Joseph. The Lord had blessed Joseph. And he made Joseph above his household, the overseer of the house. And eventually, as time went on, Potiphar's wife kind of became fond of Joseph and wanted to cause him to sin. And Joseph fled from sin. He was a righteous man. He fled from sin. He refused to commit adultery. And so she falsely accused him of a crime that he never committed, which angered Potiphar. And Potiphar threw him into prison. So not only was Joseph betrayed by his brothers and became a slave, now he's in prison for something he didn't even do. But even in prison, the Lord was still with Joseph. Because the Bible tells us that the jailer, much like Potiphar saw the Lord on Joseph, the jailer also saw the Lord on Joseph. And the prison guard, the jailer, made Joseph the overseer of the other prisoners. And it was in this prison that things started to fall into place. Pieces of the puzzle of Joseph's life started to fall into place. Because Pharaoh got mad at two of his men, and he threw them into that prison with Joseph, and these men had dreams, and they couldn't make sense of these dreams. But Joseph, the Lord was with Joseph. Joseph interpreted these dreams for the men, and they came to pass. Joseph told them, "Don't forget me. Mention me to Pharaoh." Well, the man did forget about Joseph at first, but then as time went on, Pharaoh began to have some dreams that he couldn't explain. He couldn't make sense of these dreams. He called in his magicians and the leaders of these pagan religions. He called on the pagan gods, and nobody could make sense of his dreams. And then this guy remembers. A light bulb went off in his head. There's this guy in prison. This Joseph guy. He has the Lord with him. He can interpret your dreams. And so Joseph stood before Pharaoh and interpreted his dreams. And then this is when life starts to look up for Joseph. Everything starts to fall into place. We can see that Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt, second only to him. See, when God brings us pain, he always has a purpose behind that pain. Even in Joseph's hardships, God was positioning him for greatness. If Joseph was never betrayed by his brothers, if he was never thrown into captivity, if he was never lied on and thrown into prison, he would have never stood before Pharaoh. This would have never happened. We would not be hearing this story right now. See, sometimes suffering is necessary for God to take us to a higher level, for God to position us to where he wants to take us. I like to go out, especially now that it's getting warmer, I like to go and ride my longboard around. And the other day I was longboarding just near my house, just in my neighborhood, and my wheels caught onto like a pine cone or a rock or something. And I went flying off the front of the board, scraped up my hands, scraped up my elbow pretty bad. And so, I lay there for a second on the ground, kind of in shock because that never really happened to me before. But, I got up, kind of walked it off. I don't know why, walking off the pain always seems to help. I remember every time I would crash on my bike as a kid, my dad would tell me, just walk it off. I don't know if that's psychological or if that actually helps, but I got up, kind of walked it off a little bit, got my bearings, and I headed home to go assess the damage and clean up my wound. Thankfully, what was wounded most was my pride. I got a scrape on my elbow and my hands. But when I got home, I had to clean out that wound because there was little bits of asphalt in there. I had to pluck them out. And then the painful part, I had to pour rubbing alcohol on the wound to disinfect it. And that stung so bad. But that was what was necessary to facilitate the healing so this wound would not get infected. It was what was best for the future, even though it hurt at the time. There's a popular adage that states, no pain, no gain. And I think that is very true. Even when you lift weights in the gym, you're actually, as you lift that weight, you're damaging your muscle fibers are breaking down. And then as they grow back into place, they grow stronger and bigger. That's what causes your muscles to grow. That's what causes you to be able to carry more weight in the future. See, even though it hurts right now, whatever you're going through, whatever suffering, God's not done with you. In the midst of the trial, it feels like there's no hope. All you see is the pain. All you feel is the pain. You don't understand why you're going through this. It feels hopeless. Even Jesus felt this way before he was to be crucified. We can see his agony in the Garden of Gethsemane. He said, "If it's possible, Lord, let this cup pass from me." Even Jesus had to go through the suffering before he could die on that cross and save us all of our sins. God's using your present circumstances to mold you into the shape he wants you, to mold you to be more like him. See, a blacksmith has to heat a piece of steel, hundreds, if not thousands of degrees, until this piece of steel becomes soft. And then he puts it on his work surface, his anvil or table or whatever, and he hammers it and chisels it into the shape that he desires. And then eventually that piece of steel that's been thrown, it's been put through the fire, it's been hammered, chiseled, shaped. Eventually that tool is maybe a sword or some sort of a tool or a decoration, something that will be useful in the future. See, in a similar way, God uses our hardships to mold us into his image. Romans 8:28 tells us that all things work together for good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose. God knows all things. He sees the future, and he sees what he must allow you to go through right now in the present time so he can position you for a greater future, for his purpose, for what he has for you. I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord. Not, I know the plans that you have for you, that you want to have. I know the plans that I have for you. And sometimes, for the call, for the anointing, for a greater purpose in the future, you have to be hammered down. You have to be molded. You have to be torn down. You have to be positioned for a greater future. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Child of God, whatever you're going through right now, whatever your struggle is, whatever pain you're experiencing, take heart. God is still with you. Just as God was with Joseph through his suffering, just as God was with Moses in the middle of the desert, just as Jesus was in the boat with his disciples in the midst of the raging storm, he is still with you. Don't give up. Don't throw in the towel. He is with you. He is walking beside you. Let his still small voice be your comfort and his word be your strength. Rest assured, knowing that God is working everything out for his purpose in his timing. The suffering you're going through right now, the pain, this too shall pass, and you will experience a brighter tomorrow. If not on this earth, then when you enter those pearly gates and hear, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Amen. I invite everyone to bow your heads with me in prayer. Lord, I thank you for each and every one of the people that are watching this right now. I pray that you will bless them, you will comfort them, you will guide them. Lord, we thank you for this day, for the opportunity, even though we can't be here together in person, we can still be together in spirit through this video and through live streams. Lord, I pray that you will bless each and every one of these people throughout the week as they go into their week. and that you will move in service as we finally meet together in person on Sunday morning. In Jesus' name, amen.